I've been playing League of Legends for over 10 years. I'm not a great player, but I like to think of myself as a decent all around player who works hard to overcome a profound lack of talent. I've ended gold every season that I've played ranked, and I've climbed from silver to gold in every role, except one. Top lane is pretty much the antithesis of what I'm good at. I'm a team player who likes to roam and influence the game and play for objectives. I'm not so good at bruisers and other top lane champions. I'm not good in 1v1s. So at the start of this season, I set out to finally tackle the one role I had never bothered to learn. But what would possess someone with a profound lack of talent to main one of the most mechanically challenging champions in the game? Well, I like Jayce. I think he's cool. Push many button, get dopamine. May as well have fun if I'm gonna suffer in weak side hell. The first month was rough. I didn't understand even the most basic things about my lane or my champion. My only experience with Jayce was poking people down in ARAMs. And this was all exacerbated by the fact that I decided to start playing on day one of the season when every game is full of smurfs. I started off with about a 30% win rate over my first 50 games, putting me in low silver. Plus, Arcane had just come out, and people assumed I was picking it because of the show. Even though I'd been planning on becoming a Jayce one trick at the start of the season months before Arcane came out. But pretty quickly I figured out two things. Phase Rush is Jayce's safest rune choice, and for my purposes, early laning was pretty much copy-paste in almost all matchups. I could get an early push going, crash wave 3, recall, buy tier, teleport back, wait for the enemy jungle to leave topside, and then slow push to apply pressure until level 6 when 90% of matchups become unwinnable and I have to freeze the wave for the rest of eternity. I was kind of figuring out how to play Jayce. But then something happened. Riot nerfed Jayce. They took away a bunch of his natural health and armor. Suddenly, all of my easy matchups against bruisers felt extremely challenging. I couldn't trade with anyone because I would instantly die upon being touched. My win rate dropped and I descended back to low silver. I never thought it would come to this, but it was time. I had to learn matchups and learn how to trade efficiently. This part took a long time to figure out. I got destroyed by even the most brain-dead Dariuses and Garens. Spacing out sets and playing around Fiora Vitals took a lot of practice. I died many times trying to get pressure on Nasus before he could activate his win button at level 6. Luckily, I always had Lilia, Sion, and Tahm Kench to give me a free win occasionally. Eventually, I started to realize that in some matchups I just couldn't afford to go phase rush and teleport. Sometimes against linear bruisers it was necessary, or if I was going to get ganked a lot it was necessary, but in most matchups, it was actually better to take First Strike or Conqueror to try and extend my early advantages into a lead. First Strike was easier to figure out how and when to use. It was just free money against melee lanes that I can poke easily. We'll come back to Conqueror, because it took me a long time to start using it correctly. I also learned that certain matchups require Ignite, either because my opponent heals so much, or because I needed kill pressure to snowball before I got outscaled. This stuff probably all seems pretty obvious if you've played top lane before, but it took me almost 3 months of less than a 50% win rate for it to click for me. So a period of time passes. I am improving, but it still feels extremely difficult to climb. I couldn't understand why until I looked at my match statistics. I was losing to a ton of Yoriks and Malphites. I already knew Aurelia was a bad matchup and I banned it every game, but that wasn't enough. I would constantly get counterpicked by Malphites, who could just tank all of my poke and then run me down with Q plus Comet. I also knew that Yorick was probably a winnable matchup on paper, but in practice I would just die on repeat, so I had to let go of my ego and stop playing that matchup. I developed a new plan. To be a Jayce one trick, you must be able to play 3 things. Jayce, a champion that counters Jayce, and a champion that counters Jayce counters. So I started playing a little bit of Gnar and a little bit of Gragas. I was already good at Gnar, and Gnar handles Yorick quite well, so if I saw Yorick, I would grab Gnar. I wasn't great at Gragas, but to play Gragas against Jayce, you don't have to be good at Gragas. You just have to know how to abuse Jayce's weaknesses. Q poke him forever with Comet, sustain up against his poke, and E him whenever he tries to hammer Q. Then at 6 you breathe on him and he dies. But there was a problem. In order for this to work, I needed to have counter pick. If I got assigned an early pick, I was screwed. To fix this issue, this is what I did every game. Instantly after entering the lobby, I would ask to trade champions with someone below me if they own Jayce and Gnar. It was also important to clarify that I own all the champions. Inevitably, my team would want me to play Gnar, but sorry buddy, that's not the plan. If I was able to get a pick in the bottom half of the draft, I would ban Aurelia because she's a more likely blind pick than Malphite. But if I got a pick in the top half of the draft, I would ban Malphite because he's a common counter pick. If I saw a Yorick, I would pick Gnar or ask my trade partner to pick it for me. If I didn't see Yorick, which was most games, I would pick Jayce. On the rare occasion that my opponent picked Jayce, I would grab Gragas. Occasionally my trade partner would feel so strongly about me not playing my best champion that they would insta-lock Gnar without my permission. These, and sometimes games against an Ornn, were the only games I would actually dodge. I still had a rough matchup against range tops like Quinn, Akshan, Lucian, but my saving grace was that I generally outscaled the other range tops. That draft strategy was the key to unlocking solo queue Jayce for me. My win rate rapidly started improving, and I was able to shoot up to high silver relatively quick and finally break even at nearly 50% win rate, after starting around 30% in my first 50 games. But there was one final step to ascending into Sex Tech heaven. My mechanics on the Defender of Tomorrow had been steadily improving over the months. I was finally ready to add the last piece of Exodia, getting kills and snowballing. Wait, you hadn't been snowballing and getting kills on Jayce, you ask? Well, remember earlier when I said I like being a team player who plays for objectives? Well, for better or worse, that hadn't changed when I started playing Jayce. Except now my team was always on the other side of the map, and I had to pray that my team wanted Rift Herald if I was going to help with objectives. Occasionally I would make a TP play to flank, but it didn't happen very often. Ironically, when Bel'Veth came out, I was one of the few people who loved seeing it on the enemy team, because Jayce can actually dumpster her in fights, and it was really easy to convince my team to come and contest Herald against her. Anyways, as my mechanics improved, I started to think that maybe I needed to be able to apply more pressure during my pre-6 power spikes. Reintroducing Conqueror. After a little bit of brute forcing and running bad rooms in a lot of games, I actually discovered that Conqueror was great for playing aggressive, and that Jayce's best loadout was actually Conqueror with Ignite. When I had that combination, I actually unlocked the ability to get solo kills in lane. It also made early river fights feel extremely favorable if I did more brawling and less sitting back and poking. I started to develop a new preferred playstyle. Fighting in lane, then roaming and skirmishing with wave advantage. I blundered a few games trying to solo Herald or staying away from lane too long on an invade, but gone were the days of AFK farming with first strike and trying to get tower plates. If I could get 2 or 3 kills before my opponent hit level 6, I would run away with the game every time. And that was it. About a month later, I achieved the promised land, Gold 4. After several months and 329 games of Jayce, plus a few games of Gnar, Gragas, and Kennen, which was my go-to if my team needed AP and the matchup was hard for Jayce, I finally achieved my goal of climbing to gold as a top lane Jayce one-trick. So what did I learn? Don't play Jayce in solo queue.